Okay, so we have a set of pivot principles that we use to help ensure, guarantee, if you will, you pivoting to a better business, right? One of the things that we talk a lot about over here is that we are not doing a lateral move. We are not trying to transition to the next thing. We are trying to go to our next level, i.e., evolving. Okay. But in order to do that, there are some principles, not tactics, but principles that ensure you build the next thing better. Okay. And so we have been collecting these pivot principles from 7, 8, 9 figure business owners, um, as a way to have first principle thinking, right? So if you have been in the entrepreneur space for any length of time, you have likely heard of first principles. It is essentially you learning how to focus on the things that matter most. There are lots of things that you can focus on in business, but they do not all matter equally. Okay. And so these are first principles thinking specifically for those of you who are pivoting. I started to do this series because I see too many people pivot 3 and 4 different times within just a couple of year time span, right? Before they actually find the thing that they end up really wanting to do. I also see too many people who pause, right? Maybe they go back and get jobs or pause their business and never pivot to the new thing, right? They never are able to come back from that. The other thing that I often see is the whole lateral move thing that I just said, right? They do pivot to the next thing, but they're still quote unquote paycheck to paycheck. It's just a bougie paycheck to paycheck, right? Because they're an entrepreneur, right? So that's another thing that I often see. And so today in this episode, we're going to talk about principle number 3, that if you use it, I promise you, you will have a better business, a better pivot than you could have imagined. Okay. All right, so this is a topic that I've talked about in our series, brand pieces, but I'm going to come from a slightly different angle today. And of course, if you hear anything that you like, check out Pivot School. It has all kinds of information and details and all of that that I won't go in today. But if you like what I'm talking about, that's the place you need to be. Okay. So I don't know if you've ever heard of Emma. I'm going to butcher her last name. I think it's Grady, but in short, she is a British entrepreneur who has built super successful companies, right? She's been a founding partner in Skims, right? She has built multiple, I want to hear that, multiple billion-dollar brands, right? She's been on Forbes richest self-made women. I could keep going, but she is top of her class. Okay. That's the point. She is that girl. Okay. And she recently did an interview on the Breakfast Club, and a lot of people were up in arms about one thing that she said in particular, which is she is a 3-hour mom. Right now, to be for clarity purposes, she has 4 children. Okay. And when she said she is a 3-hour mom, basically she could only spend 3 hours with her kids at one time. Right. And she went on to talk about how she's a core memory mom, how she cares about the big things, the big memories, right? She has a whole philosophy around it that I will not go into. Uh, but she basically talks about how after working a bunch of hours or even spending a morning with her kids on a Saturday, that she needs to be able to take care of herself. And she is on this, mission, for lack of a better word, to destigmatize what it means to be a mom. Okay. That's a whole nother thing. I'm going to make a point that has to do with you. Okay. Her whole point was that if she is good, the whole family is good. And I wish we understood that point. Like, I wish we understood that if you just started to put yourself first, I know that's crazy. It feels like you're being selfish. But if you realize that so goes you, so goes your household, you wouldn't see it as selfish. I say this all the time, that putting yourself first is not selfish. That we've confused the definitions of selfish. Selfish is not you putting yourself first, it's you thinking about yourself only. Big, big difference. Okay. Not going down that rabbit hole. The one point that she made that I want to bring up here that applies to you is that she understands how to create and hold a vision for herself. for the type of woman she wants to be, the type of mom she wants to be, the type of wife she wants to be, etc. Right? She knows the type of parent that she wants to be. And she went on to list several different things. She doesn't do AM, right? She does not take her kids to school. She don't feel bad about that. Why? Because she gets up and goes to work early in the morning. But what she does do, she is always at home at 5:30, right? What she loves is bedtimes and story time. Like that's her thing, right? She has her own standards that she has set for herself based on who she wants to be. And in this case, the type of parent that she wants to be. Right. And so I ask you, friend, okay, how clear are you on the kind of woman, the kind of business owner, the kind of fill in the blank, whatever roles you have that you want to be? Right. Because the principle that we have is called the goal is for you to be internally led, not externally driven. Part of the reason why the business did not work as well as you would have liked it to work, and not to mean that it wasn't successful, because a lot of my clients sold their companies, right? You have to have some kind of success to sell your companies. They've made multiple six figures. They've had live events. They've been on different publications. They've had all kinds of success. But while they had that success, there were all these things about the business that they did not like. They barely paying themselves. They don't have enough cash reserves, et cetera, et cetera. So when I say the last business wasn't exactly what you want, right? In order for you to not rebuild that kind of business, you know what you need? You need to be internally led, not externally driven. And you cannot be internally led when you have no clear vision for the roles and the responsibilities that you have, right? It's not, I'm not talking about you don't have an idea of the type of mother or the type of business owner. You have lots of ideas. You have lots of desires. You have lots of dreams. But we are not talking about desires and dreams, friend. We're talking about a very clear vision, right? And if you do not have a clear vision, you cannot be internally led. You will end up being externally driven, right? She could easily be externally driven, meaning, oh, well, society thinks that, me only spending a few hours with my kids at one time makes me a bad mom, and she could be walking around with mom guilt. But instead, she is internally led. That is our principle, our pivot principle number 3. Internally led, not externally driven. When you learn to do this one thing, you build the business that you love. You give yourself permission to go all in on the things that you desire, right? So you'd have to know what the vision is, and then you'd have to practice holding the standard related to them, right? So if you want this to be your last pivot, if you want this to be your legacy pivot, as we call it, right? Meaning you make a bigger difference in the next decade than you even did in the decade before, right? You must learn to operate internally rather than externally. You must learn to be internally led rather than externally driven. And that requires that you learn to operate from your vision, which means you'd have to first have a vision, right? People confuse vision with values, right? They're often operating from their values, but that is not what I'm talking about. Values are broad, right? They don't give you the same level of direction as your vision does, because your vision is specific, right? She was able to clearly articulate, oh, I don't do mornings, I do evenings. You don't get that kind of specificity from your values. You get that kind of specificity from your vision, right? Vision helps you know exactly who you want to be, and then you practice operating from that place. Okay? That's what I want you to be able to hear. You need a vision for what you're building. You need a vision for your brand. You need a vision for your marketing. You need a vision for the role that you will play in your company, for your messaging, etc. Right? And of course, if you need help learning to operate in being internally led rather than externally driven, right? Being able to operate with a clear vision, check out Pivot School. We teach this very concept inside of the program, so you never have to struggle with doing what the coach, the guru, the internet, any of that says. It's your standards that you live by.